Original native peoples that inhabited Canada came from Asia thousands of years before European settlers. These people included the Algonquins, Crees, Innu, Iroquois, Mohawks, and Wendat. They lived off the land, hunting and gathering as well as fishing off of the coast. European exploration. On July 24, 1534, French explorer Jacques Cartier planted a cross on the Gaspé Peninsula and claimed it for France. He thought that he had reached an Asian land. He kidnapped some of the natives and brought them back to France. He produced an intelligent estimation of the resources of Canada, both natural and human. While some of his actions towards the St. Louis Iroquois were dishonorable, he did try several times to establish friendship with them and other native peoples across the St. Lawrence River, an indispensable preliminary to French settlement on their land. He made 3 voyages to 50 undiscovered harbors in Canada without losing a single ship. European settlement. In 1603, Samuel de Champlain was recruited by Catholic commander Aymar de Chastes for his voyage of exploration in America. Henry IV, King of France, named him Royal Geographer. He arrived in Tadoussac on May 26th and received a warm welcome from the local tribes. He then visited the Saguenay and future locations of Quebec, Montreal, and Boucherville. Indian chief Anna de Beaujeu of Tadoussac, whom Champlain met with, declared that he saw no objection to France sending colonists on his land. Champlain explored the Atlantic coast all the way down to Cape Cod. In 1608, since the English were increasing their presence in the Gulf of St. Laurent, Champlain decided to head inland. At the foot of Cap des Monts, Champlain builds the l'Habitation de Quebec, destined to become the capital of New France. Life in Quebec, with 100 or so people living under Champlain's fortifications, was hard due to a lack of resources. In 1629, some British sailors attacked and seized Quebec under the excuse of Britain's war with France. Champlain went to England to appeal for help from the French ambassador, and learned that the war between France and England had ended by the time the British seized Quebec. Because of this, England was forced to give Quebec back to the French. Around the 1630s, rich explorers from France began to try to make a name for themselves in the newly formed Quebec colony. They traded lumber and fur with each other and the native populations. The Catholic Church was given 30% of land holdings in the new colony, which set the stage for the great Catholic influence in the region. In the 18th century, French settlers often came into conflict with their British counterparts over land and goods. These conflicts escalated into what is now known as the French and Indian War, also called the 7 Years' War in French Canada. This conflict was over French holdings close to British colonial land, including forts in upstate New York and what is now Pittsburgh. The British not only secured the disputed land in this conflict, but also managed to take control of most of France's colonies near and including Quebec. They allowed the people to continue to live their lives practicing their Catholic faith and abiding by the French Civil Code. The purpose of this was to secure the alliance of the French Canadians, with unrest growing in the American colonies to the south. Despite attempts during the American Revolution to rid Britain of its holdings in Canada, the Crown still controlled Quebec and the rest of the Canadian colonies. Many royalists from the American colonies fled to Quebec after the Revolutionary War, creating conflict with the French-speaking people there. Despite conflict between the French and English-speaking people, Canada and Quebec became more populated and organized during the 18th and 19th centuries. Quebec became an official province, part of the Dominion of Canada, in 1867. It then became a part of the larger governmental process for a united Canada. Many aspects of life for French-speaking Quebecois remained dominated by the Catholic Church in the decades following 1867. The Church operated many of the institutions of the province, including most French-language schools, hospitals, and charitable organizations. In 19th century Quebec, the main sources of income were still farming and fur gathering. In the growingly industrialized world, Quebec was held back by its outdated economy. By the 1850s, soil nutrients were becoming exhausted. The farming methods they used were outdated. About this time, the textile industry in New England experienced a boom. With living conditions so harsh and work very hard to find even in the largest city, Montreal, emigration seemed the only option for many. As the first wave moved out in 1850, word of mouth soon began to move to larger crowds by the late 1870s. Mill owners hired these French immigrants to staff their mills more cheaply than American and Irish-born workers, who themselves were displaced.